We are live from the America First Warehouse at Long Island for the inaugural episode of Liberty's Cage. I am your co-host. I am your co-host, Sarah McAbee, and I'm joined by my co-host, Shane Jenkins.
Hi, how's it going, Sarah?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
What an honor to be here tonight before all of you.
Absolutely. This is an exciting thing. This is something that we have been working on with Joe for quite some time now. We have known Joe, and what he and his team has done for the January 6th movement has been absolutely incredible. So thank you, Joe. Everybody here, you guys have been absolutely wonderful to us. So the reason this podcast is even starting is because Shane himself is a January 6th defendant. I am a January 6th advocate. You are now a former January 6th defendant.
Thank you, President Trump.
Absolutely. So in this podcast, what we're going to do is break down different things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is January 6th. Not only January 6th, but the second segment, we're going to talk about the court system. Because what January 6th has done is given us a platform to speak about the injustices that occurred, because something that Shane can highlight is it's not only January 6th defendants that are over-prosecuted and overcharged. And this is supposed to be America. It's a beacon of hope to other countries, and we have a broken justice system. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. We're supposed to be the leading nation in the world, and I think that we're failing miserably the people that are incarcerated. And though you may not think it directly, you may not agree, but it directly impacts all of us, because the people in prison, a very large percent of them are going to be coming home, and they're going to move in next door to you and next door to her and me, and their kids are going to go to school with our kids. And so we need to invest in those people and see the humanity in those people. And so that's something that we want to highlight, is the changes that can be made in the justice system. And I think we got a good ability to work towards that, and maybe make some changes while we got a friendly administration.
Yeah, I think so too. And one of the things we can talk about a little bit later in another segment is, I will say that Republicans and conservatives, the Patriot movement, is kind of ignorant to how corrupt the justice system is, and kind of just ignorant to it. And so I think it's important now that you have this platform, that other January 6th have this platform to be empowered to stand up now and say, you're not going to let your sacrifices go in vain.
No, for sure. And that's the thing, that I think we have a unique perspective being conservative, Christian, and a lot of our colleagues or our representatives in Congress and the Senate claim to be Christians. Well, Jesus talks about the prisoner. I mean, Jesus pardoned he pardoned a murderer on the cross, while he was on the cross. So we need to look at how we can do this better, and I just think that we have a good opportunity. But we want to hold those representatives accountable for their beliefs. They claim to be a Christian. Well, let's invest in these people, and let's try to do right by the people in jail, because it's going to have a ripple effect on society, and it's going to have an impact on everybody else, because those men are going to come home and be better fathers. The moms are going to come home and be better mothers, better employees, better churchgoers, better business owners. So it behooves all of us to make an effort to get this right.
So technically our first segment is called Capitol Shadows, January 6th. But I want to go a little bit further back, because something you've been very transparent about is your checkered past and how you got to where you were in your life on January 6th. So talk a little bit about that.
About my past?
Yes.
Well, my life was pretty normal starting out, but I found out I was adopted when I was 12 or 13 years old, and it really set me down a dark path. I felt like I had what you would call an identity crisis. Shane Jenkins, when I found out I was adopted, I was like, Shane Jenkins is a lie. That's not even my real name. I don't even know who I really am. And I felt betrayed by my adopted family, because I felt like they had known that I was adopted this whole time and just lied to me, which is I was a very immature young man at this point in my life. Some would argue today I'm still an immature young man, not really. But I had that identity crisis, and then I started to look at my mother, and I wondered, well, what was so wrong with me, like that she could just throw me away like that? I saw a little, back then I had red hair, freckles, and blue eyes, and I was like, man, this is an adorable little baby. How could a woman do that to me, And so I had the wounds of a young boy, and so it really took me down a dark path. I kind of checked out on sports and started drinking and doing drugs, skipping school. And by the age of 15, I was in jail for aggravated robbery. By the age of 16, I was in a car when some friends of mine killed a guy and shot 2 more people. I didn't do anything. I was just there. But I ended up going to juvenile prison in Texas for 3 years from the age of 16 to 19. I got out when I was 19. My mom, my adopted dad had died when I was 16 years old when I was locked up. And she remarried an alcoholic, drug addict, abusive Vietnam War hero. And a year later, when I was 20 years old, one night I came home and we had an argument and he threatened to kill me. Later on that night, I heard him and my mom fighting and heard her screaming upstairs, and I kicked in the door to her bedroom, and he was laying in bed with a shotgun and shot at me and missed my head by about 6 inches and blew the top of the door frame off the door behind me. I ran downstairs and I called 911. While I was on the phone to 911, my mom came down there and was standing next to me as he came down the stairs with the very same shotgun he had just shot at me with. And whenever he got down to the bottom of the stairs, I shot at him 13 times, hit him 11 times. He died as a result on the way to the hospital, and I was charged with murder as a 20-year-old young man. So here I was. I had seen people killed by my friends, and then now I've taken the life of someone that I lived with for a year, my stepdad, my mother's husband, a Vietnam War hero, and it just really tormented my soul. And so I had this war going on inside of me. And I didn't know how to deal with it because on the one hand, I was like, he was trying to hurt you and your mom. He got what he deserved. On the other hand, I had taken a human life, and so it was really just something that I couldn't deal with. And so I turned really heavily to drugs and alcohol and tried to destroy myself. Ended up in adult prison by the age of 23, and off and on from that point on, I've done about 16 years of my life in prison. But thank God, in the year 2016, I was at a program called the Prison Fellowship Program in Houston, Texas, which was strangely enough started by Chuck Colson to tie back to the political realm. He was the hatchet man for Richard Nixon, and I took that program. It's an 18-month program about the life of Jesus Christ. And on a day in December of 2016, I gave my life. I stood up and said, I want to follow Jesus. That is a good place to applaud. And Jesus Christ died on the cross for me even when I was his enemy. He chose to go to the cross for me, and I'm so thankful for that. That grace and that love is real, and I really turned the corner in my life at that point. I moved to Houston, Texas, became a part of a prison ministry, was eventually hired on staff. I was going back into prisons to share the gospel, and really that's where my politics sprang from. My political stance is based on biblical principles. And I really started to care about the unborn. I saw that, God said, I knew you in your mother's womb. I know the amount of hairs on your head, or in my case, the lack of hairs on your head. But I understood the preciousness of the unborn. And so that's where I started watching. And again, I was in prison until 2018, got out, but I watched the persecution of Donald Trump from the Russia, all that. And I really started to pay attention. I knew that I could see what the media was doing. They were lying, and they were going after this man because he used to be a Democrat, and he turned their back on him, and they were set out to destroy him. So that eventually led me to, when I got out 2018, I ended up going and voting for the first time in 2020 because I had been off parole, stayed out of trouble, and voted in the 2020 election. And voted early in Texas, in Fort Worth. And I moved to Houston right after the election, and I watched the election night actually in Houston, Texas. And I went to bed about 10:30, 11, and I was like, we got this in the bag. Donald Trump, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. Donald Trump's going to be our president. And that's not what happened. So I wake up the next day, and I'm like, he lost. And then they started showing the videos of, the boxes coming out from underneath the table, and then, 200,000 votes straight for Joe Biden. Which is statistically impossible. Then you had more people voting in a county than were registered to vote, which is impossible. So there was a lot of questions that I had, and we had some very small margins with the swing states. Many of the states were won by less than like 12,000 votes, like 8 to 12,000 votes. And so there's a lot of, it's a very fine line when you're counting millions and millions of votes. So Trump sent out that tweet, and I don't know if you guys know it or not. I used to be a little wild, and Trump said, come to D.C., join the Stop the Steal rally, and it said, in all caps, it said, "We'll be wild." And I was like, well, I need to go check this out. And so I went to go exercise my First Amendment right because, I felt like it was wrong what they were doing. I felt like they were going to try to install the person that the machine wanted, and they were going to deny the American people the president that we rightly voted for. You can't tell me that there's any way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. And so that led me to January 6th, and I went to protest. They told us that there was a potential for violence, that Antifa and BLM would be trying to separate people from the crowd and harm people. So, a lot of people took pepper spray or an axe handle for a flag stick. I personally took tomahawks, just because I had watched The Patriot and Braveheart too many times. But, and I'm gonna stand in the gap for people. If somebody's trying to harm you, or a woman, or someone that's elderly, they better not do that in front of me, because there's going to be a problem. And so it was more for other people than for me. But that led me to being charged with 12 felony counts. And I was arrested on March 5th, 2 months after January the 6th, by Houston SWAT and the FBI. They sent the head of the Joint Terrorism Task Force to my house to arrest me. They labeled me a Tier 1 anti-government extremist. I did break a window and I did assault federal officers, but I also watched Roseanne Boylan die right in front of me. I watched Victoria White was assaulted about 38 times in the head with an extendable baton. I was also hit with the same extendable baton in the back of the head by Commander Bagshaw from the DC Metro Police. And so, I reacted in anger. And so I believe it was a righteous anger, and I believe that it's okay to stand up for people when you see them being hurt, when yourself is being hurt, when you heard somebody was shot inside the Capitol.
I think any man of honor, any American patriot would do just that. And that's what we saw with January 6th defendants. So when we come back from the commercial, I really want to talk about your treatment from January 6th, because that's something that has been unheard of in America, is the treatment January 6th defendants endured. So we'll be back.
I told you this was crazy. I'm out of here. No life. Free stuff for all. I could be such a downer.
To you, bow to the master staff. Come to me. Oh my God, this guy's from Jersey.
Hi. How you doing? Fuck up my stage.
I'm pretty sure I'm a woman.
No, you're not, Steve. Oh! Oh!
You're wet on my side.
Now instead of a poke, you're getting a smack!
What have I done?
Hi, my name is Elena Ruseva, aka Megalangela. Please check my art at www.megalangela.vip.
It's me, Joe the Box, at the America First Warehouse, the most patriotic venue in all the land. We just finished up 2 incredible parties like you wouldn't believe. Packed house, sold out. Hey, Scotty Lebedo, this is a nice piece from Scotty, huh? That's what he did. Now, I did tell you that we was in the America First Warehouse, but no, we're not. We're here at the America First Motor Club. Come on in Sunday mornings. We love America. America First, everybody. Come on and see us.
Are you a musician, comedian, actor, filmmaker, or artist who stands for traditional American values? Do you believe in the preservation of our nation, our culture, and our freedoms? If you share our passion for America and want to use your talents to make a difference, we want to hear from you. Our mission is clear. Through the arts, we uphold the principles of freedom, faith, family, and the American spirit. It's time to step up to the mic and make your voices heard. So contact us at AmericanConservativeArtists.com.
America First Warehouse was really the most patriotic venue that you can ever imagine. We wanted to build something for people to be able to come to and feel so comfortable and so relaxed because there is nothing out there like it. We give an opportunity for people to really feel good about themselves and about this great country. Back. Let's go.
And we are back live from the America First Warehouse.
Yeah.
This is Liberty's Cage, a justice reform podcast. So we want to continue on, continue with the segment one where we were talking about capital shadows, but we also want to talk about the gavel shadow, and that's with what happened in the court system. And Shane can talk about his treatment at what he endured in the DC jail, but really it happened because you were denied bond. Like many January 6 defendants. Can you walk us through what that looked like, starting from the morning of March 5th when you were arrested?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I broke a window, threw sticks at fully armored up riot police, and they pulled an armored personnel carrier up in my front yard with the top popped on it with megaphone. Shane Jenkins, this is Houston SWAT and the FBI. You need to come outside. They're yelling. They've got the house surrounded. They've got dogs. They've got everything. And they, when I came outside, they had a ballistic shield with about 7 rifles pointed at my chest with the laser beams on them. And I mean, at the worst, maybe a minor assault. I broke a window, so vandalism or something like that. And I had reached out to the FBI because I had heard they were looking for me or monitoring me or whatever, and so I just wanted to nip it in the bud, go ahead and turn myself in. But that's not what they wanted. They wanted the headline. What I think they really wanted was they wanted somebody, because January 6 peoples love the Second Amendment, and what I think they wanted to do was to show up at somebody's house, and I think they wanted somebody to shoot it out with the police so they could say, you see what MAGA did? You see what those violent January 6 insurrectionists did? They shot at the police officers. I think that's what they wanted, and that's why, and they wanted the headlines. So I was denied bond. They drugged me, and I went to a Houston federal court. They took me to FDC Houston, which is a federal detention center, Houston, Texas. And they took me before the court, and the lady prosecutor looked at the judge and said, Your Honor, he's one of the worst January 6ers, and he was wearing a 1776 hoodie, Your Honor. You know what that means, and I was like, what does that mean? But so they, and come to find out, we saw from, I think, Agent Steve Friend and these people that went before Congress and testified, these FBI whistleblowers said that, anything Second Amendment, anything the Gadsden flag, don't tread on me, anything 1776, these are like hit words for FBI extremists, alert words that they watch for, and so that's how they were labeled people, domestic extremists or domestic terrorists. But I was denied bond, and I don't know if you guys know it or not, but there is such a thing as Con Air. They flew me. I spent about 30 days and first and foremost in the Houston jail. They took me to a cell and left me in the cell for 11 days without opening the door, because they were terrified of COVID, and you had to pass 2 COVID tests, and you could only get like 1 a week. But they denied me showers for 11 days. Now, not to say that I didn't take a bird bath in the sink or whatever I had to do, because I wasn't going to lay there and stink in that cell. But where in the world do you deny somebody a shower? They would open. Yeah, it's not. You wouldn't think it's America, and that's kind of why we're doing what we're doing. But I eventually made it to DC. They put me on an airplane on Con Air. They put me in a black box, which not everybody gets a black box, but it restricts your. Normally you can move handcuffs like this, but with the black box you can't. They're locked in. And so because we were the worst of the worst domestic terrorists, most January 6ers had the black box. And so I made it to DC, I guess mid-April, after spending some time in Oklahoma and then Northern Neck Regional Jail in, I guess, West Virginia. And then in the DC jail, they put you in quarantine. So I did 17 days in solid, like locked in a cell again, in the DC jail. But one highlight to this that I will never forget is C2B was next door, and there's a door separating those pods, and then we're in the next one next door. And me and about 3 of the other guys, Julian Cater and Pete Schwartz, we could hear every night at 9 o'clock. We could hear them. excuse me, hear them singing the anthem next door. And it was just like, those are our people over there. And so we knew we were going to get over there. But it was just something I'll never forget, along with watching the fireworks. We were talking about it last night. I think watching the fireworks, 4th of July, out the bars of the windows in D.C. It's just something I'll never forget. But so, again, they deny me bond in D.C. And keeping me in and denying me bond is one thing, because I have a criminal record and there is violence in my past. Okay, so maybe he's dangerous to society. I'll give him that. I should have stayed in jail. I didn't need him on. I didn't need to be treated the way I was treated. But you've got men like Jeffrey McKillop, Green Beret Special Forces. You've got Robert Morse, Jessica Watkins, 82nd Airborne Infantry Rangers. You've got James McGrew, Ryan Nichols, Thomas Webster, Dan Caldwell, Bart Shively, all Marines. You've got regular Army, regular Air Force, regular Navy. You got law enforcement. You have prison guards. Your husband.
72% of January 6th defendants were veterans or first responders.
That's right. And to keep these people, these guys never had a speeding ticket, offered up life and limb, mental health for this country, and you turn around and say, nope, you're a threat to society because we're afraid you're going to do another insurrection or something like that.
Well, normally when you go to court, if you have served this country in some capacity, it's an advantage to you. And instead, they used it against January 6 defendants to give them more time. They trained them to protect this country from enemies, foreign and domestic. And because they stood up to domestic enemies, they used it against them.
What's crazy is my criminal history was shown in a good light and favor. They gave me less time because of my criminal history in the D.C. jail. This is how backwards it is. But men like Thomas Webster, a Marine, NYPD for 30 years, on the governor's detail in New York with, I forget the governor's name, but he worked for the governor for 10 years. He witnessed a woman be assaulted by the police and attacked a cop and tackled him on the ground. And because he was a law enforcement officer, they gave him more time than they gave me, and he didn't have a criminal record. And he simply punched a cop in the face mask helmet. But because he was military and because he was law enforcement, they punished him worse. But back to the jail, and they kept all these men without bond. So there was anywhere from 35 to 50 of us in there at a time. I did 32 months in the D.C. jail. But while I was there, they denied us visits for 2 years. So they not only flew me 1,000 miles away from home, where I'm far from moral support or far from my children and my family, they denied us visits. So my family couldn't even come to the jail and see me if they wanted to. And so they also denied all of us religious services. That means no chaplain, no church, no communion, no none of that, because we all refused to get vaccinated. And so the Muslims had a religious exemption. And they could go to the mosque in the jail, but because we're white Christian nationalists and refuse to take the vaccine, we couldn't. We told them, I want to exercise my religious exemption because it's made with aborted fetal. It was created using aborted fetal parts, and so they refused it, and they denied us that. They also denied us haircuts for a year. Now, you may not think I need a haircut, but my hair, I looked like it was crazy. I'm bald on the top, and it grew around the sides. I looked nutty, and then. They also denied us fingernail clippers for a year. So you can't cut your fingernails for a year, and it was horrific, and nothing like that should ever happen. Not only that, every holiday, whether it was like Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas, the officers that were working for whatever reason were angry about having to be at work, and they would come into the pod, manufacture some crisis, assault somebody, drag somebody to the hole, beat the crap out of people. And one time they came in early in the morning, kicked all our cell doors open, drug us out of there, took us to another part of the jail because they were having some kind of rally outside the jail, and they were afraid that they were going to break us out of jail. So they moved us to another part of the jail, like under this super hidden secret agenda, and we're like, are they taking us to kill us right now? What
So you've been in prison before. Was your experience in D.C. anything like any of the time that you did previously?
And like I said, prior to January 6th, I had done 16 years in prison. I had never seen anything like this. It blew my. Now I had seen, abusive guards. I had seen dirty guards and all that, but I had never seen anybody denied anything over their political beliefs. And the bad part about it was we ended up moving next to other DC inmates, where we would go to medical and we'd be able to actually talk to the other DC inmates. And we're like, hey, are y'all locked in your cell 22 hours a day? They're like, no, we've been out for 5 hours a day for months. And so they were treating us differently than they were treating the other people in the jail. And it just really, it blew my mind. And, you know, a lot of the guys, we would organize in there and we would have sit-ins. We would be like, tonight when they tell us to go in our cells, we're not going in. I said, we're not doing that. We're going to sit out here in the day room, and when they bring the goon squad in here, we're going to link arms. We're not going to assault anybody. We're not going to fight back. But they're going to have to spray us, and they're going to have to drag each one of us to the chute, to the hole, or to our cells. And so we started to resist when we started to find out how we were being treated differently. And then we also had our families, people on the outside were organizing Telegram chats, and they were becoming active. They were like, okay, we're going to call our congressmen, call our senators, we're going to write letters, we're going to send emails, we're going to come up to the jail and protest. And you had Mickey Whithoff, God bless her soul, and coming up and doing the Freedom Corner outside the jail, and, you know, giving us a platform and live streaming out there. And we would call in and talk to her, and she actually texted me today. If you're watching this, Mickey, we love you.
Yes, we do.
Thank you for fighting for us.
Yeah, that was a big thing when something would happen and it would get out, because it wasn't just Mickey and Nicole and the crew that stood on the corner, but people would live stream it out. So there were thousands of patriots across the country watching this unfold. And when a call to action was put out, that's what we the people are for. And there were times that you guys would have communication cut off because they didn't want you talking to the outside to let them know what was going on.
Well, something would happen, and then they would lock us all in a cell, and to where we couldn't get to the phone. But usually if something happened, somebody would get on the phone, hey, tell them that, you know, Jeff just got taken, like Jeff McKillop, the Green Beret. He's the only person I've ever met in jail who got his cell raided by the FBI while we're in jail. They came in and took all his evidence. We had figured out a way to get information out and get videos out that we were finding nefarious, you know, questionable deals. We were getting information out, and they couldn't figure out how we were doing it, so they raided his cell and took
But
off.
never in American history have American citizens been treated like this, have they?
I can't speak to a ton that they have, no.
Well, when we come back, let's talk about it more.
Queens Village Republican Club is America's oldest Republican club, founded in 1875. Situated in President Trump's hometown in Queens, New York, we are America First MAGA Republicans, empowering fellow Republicans to get involved in the game of politics at the grassroots level. We host inspiring monthly club meetings on the first Thursday of each month at 8 p.m. For more information, please go to our website at www.qvgop.org.
Corporate transfer, fine professional, moving and storage, and inventory management.
The dehumanizing rhetoric of Adolf Hitler. Donald Trump's language mirrors this directly.
Well, Hitler was duly elected.
Let's deal with Hitler, okay?
I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that is Mussolini Hitler-like language.
You say Nazi enough times, someone's gonna actually have the guts to do it.
Donald Trump would invoke Adolf Hitler.
What percentage of this event happening was due to Donald Trump's rhetoric?
Don't miss Trump next time.
What do you make of the excess deaths?
None of us, not the president, not those hypothetical guys in the smoky rooms fully know what's going on, but we can speak about the unfolding of recent history with certainty.
Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy.
That is not how it works. That is a threat to democracy.
No. No.
You anti-Semitic piece of
When you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit.
Free fries when you get vaccinated? Vaccination.
Welcome back to Liberty's Cage, live from Long Island, the America First Warehouse.
What an honor it is to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes,
here.
absolutely. Thank you, Joe, and the team, and our live audience tonight.
Yeah, there you go.
So back with segment 3, it's called Behind the Bars. And one thing that I want to talk about is not only the treatment that you endured in D.C. jail, because that is a county jail. That's not even federal prison.
Right.
Let's talk about what you witnessed from the time that you were sentenced on in federal prison.
Yeah, let's go. I'm going to back up just a hair. They offered me 92 to 115 months in prison, which is like 8.5 to 9.5 years. I went to trial. Well, I told them, I said, I would love to consider your plea offer, but I don't negotiate with terrorists. And that was when my lawyer was like, oh my God, what did you just say that for? He's like, I want to win this case for you. And I was like, there's no way we're winning this case. And so I got 7 years at trial and ended up going to federal prison in Pollock, Louisiana. And I have never, and I've been to some of the worst prisons in the state of Texas, like the Cofield unit, like the Robertson unit, just some bad prisons where people die and stuff like that. But what I saw in federal prison blew my mind. The drugs, the violence, the gangs run the prison. The guards coordinate with the gangs to run the prison. The guards are a gang themselves. I witnessed 2 people die in about a 90-day period. I watched one guy overdosed on fentanyl, or it's K2. It's just basically a piece of paper that they smoke. It's supposed to be a synthetic cannabinoid, but it's actually PCP and fentanyl-laced paper is what it is. And then another guy got beat to death by his cellmate, beat to death and strangled. And then the one guy overdosed on fentanyl, they wheel him out. We're locked in our cell for an hour or 2, and we come right back out like nothing happened. And I'm like, what is going on? At least in Texas prison, if somebody dies, they're going to lock the whole prison down for about 90 days. And they're going to do investigation. They're going to try to figure out what's going on. If it was a gang hit or something, they're going to lock up all those gang members and do all this, that, the other. Same thing when the other guy got murdered. They lock us in our cell for a couple of hours and right back to business like nothing happened. I'm like, what is going on? It was deliberately, and they had a tone of deliberate indifference. They didn't care. They were doing their shift. They're going home to their family. They didn't blink at it, and it just blew my mind. I watched guards, let's say I wrote a grievance, which is basically a complaint against the officers. If I wrote a grievance, then the guards would get it, and they would go tell. Because the way federal prison works is there's a thing called cars. And basically, like, I'm a white guy and I'm from Texas, so I would be in the Texas car typically. And you don't have any say-so over what's going on. Like, when you get there, like, we want to see your paperwork. We want to know if you're a sex offender, if you testified against anybody. If any of that is in your paperwork, you're getting jumped by several people or stabbed or beat off the yard is what they would call it. And then if your paperwork is good, then they say, well, you're on deck, which means the next time that somebody comes with messed up paperwork, or the next time somebody runs up a drug debt or offends one of the other gang cars, then now you and somebody else are going to go walk up behind. Nobody's going to tell this dude what's happening. You're going to have to jump and walk into chow in front of like all the cops. You're going to run up behind him and just start beating the dude up, unaware of what's going on. And I refused to participate in that. And I was placed in protective custody because I refused to participate. I was not willing to compromise my Christian values to participate in that. I'm just not. I'm not going to change who I am. I've done too many years in prison and been through too much to know that that's not okay. And I know that this is historic what I'm going through, and I don't want to tarnish that by compromising who I am as a man or as a Christian or as,
So you were punished for that, though?
Yeah, I spent out of the 14 months I was in federal prison, I spent about 10 months in solitary confinement. The night of my pardon, I was in solitary confinement. You know, I listened to not to get sidetracked, but that night that day I listened to the inauguration, and I heard President Trump say, after his original speech, he came and he said, there's going to be some very happy J6 people later on. And I was like, what does that mean? Because they had started saying, well, the violent versus the nonviolent, you know. Sean Hannity and all these, you know, conservative pundits are like, well, we don't think they should pardon the violent Jan 6ers whenever they don't take into consideration any of the extenuating circumstances.
Well, and let's be honest, people that weren't charged with a 1512 were charged with violent crimes even if they weren't violent.
That's right. No, that's right. You know, many people had 4 misdemeanor, basically trespassing, and then were given the 1512, which was a 20-year charge, which was a way to keep people in jail longer and hold them. And even after the Supreme Court overthrew the 1512, they still kept it on my record. They didn't even take it off because, you know, again, using lawfare and abusing their power in the courts, they didn't want to do what they were instructed to do by the Supreme Court.
So going back to your time in prison, I just want to confirm you were in prison in the United States of America?
Absolutely.
And that's how you were treated?
Absolutely.
I think people need to know that the reason that they keep the prisons as full as they do, because that's another problem, is the overcrowding, is because it's a business for the government. It's an $8 billion a year program for the federal government. So they don't care about your morals. They don't care about the gangs. They don't care about the guards that they don't have enough of. They're understaffed, and so they have these guards that work ungodly amount of hours, and that's why you guys are locked in. That's why you're denied visitation. It's why, you know, you can drive 9 hours. From experience, you can drive 9 hours and show up at the prison that morning for visitation, and they just turn you away because they are understaffed. They don't care about the families. They don't care about you as inmates, because when you're in there, something we can briefly touch on is Unicor. You make 14 cents an hour working for them. Will you tell them what you were making when you were working in Pollock, the materials you were making?
This is so good. I'm not a Ukraine advocate, and it really irks me that we send billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine, one of the most corrupt countries in the world. But we were manufacturing canteen pouches for the Ukrainian army for 14 cents an hour.
So then you worked for 14 cents an hour, and then our federal government sold them to the Ukraine military.
Right. We give the money to the Ukraine, and we sell them these goods. The money comes back to...
So it's slave labor.
Yes.
Yes,
yeah.
because our Constitution allows that. Many people don't know that, that our Constitution still allows labor for those that are incarcerated. Let's talk about Unicor at Terre Haute, where you were, that it was a condemned prison, meaning that it should not have been open because of the state that it was in. But because their Unicor factory made $3 million, Unicor made $4 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
They paid $1 million a year fine to keep it open, so they profited $3 million a year.
To keep a condemned prison open that is uninhabitable, where the water contains H. pylori, which causes stomach cancer, and many, many people repetitively test positive for H. pylori, which I am going to get tested for H. pylori. I was told that I do have it, but it's something that's in the water, and they keep that prison open because it's a moneymaker, and it's
which most prisons, the 123, I think that we have 123, 127, are moneymakers for our federal government.
Absolutely, and I don't think people should be profiting off of people's misery. I think we should be working to help these people repair their lives and be the best people that they can be. Instead of trying to make a profit, we should be pouring that money into programs or education or whatever direction we decide to go.
So speaking a little bit about programs, because we can go into that more in the next segment, but talk a little bit about the programs. Like, did you have to go every single day and attend the program and do the coursework and do the homework, or would they sometimes sweep things under the rug and just make you do a packet or two?
Oh, no. So the way it works, like for First Step Act, which is something that Donald Trump passed, thank you, sir, but I wasn't eligible for that because I had violent charges, but as a requirement to get that good time or time off of your sentence, you were required to take courses, and it could be art class, or it could be any number of things. It could be about truck driving, it could be whatever. But what they do is the inmate runs it, and for stamps, which is what you use for money in there, you can pay somebody a couple books of stamps, and they sign on the paper that you took the course, and now you get credit for it, so now you're going to get your time off. So nobody's doing anything to better themselves or benefit themselves. It's a scam, and I'm sure they charge money to the federal government for how many people go through the class every year, and it's not helpful, it's not beneficial to anybody.
So there is no true rehabilitation?
Not in the federal prison system, though.
It's such a shame, honestly. And that's why I believe that there is such a high recidivism rate in America, because there is no rehabilitation. One of the things you can talk about, if you want to briefly talk about it now, because we have some time, is about how, you talked about they should be, now that President Trump is in, they should be building these factories next to these prisons to give people a chance to work.
Right. That's one of the ideas that I have is bringing these jobs back to America, whether it's Amazon, Google, whatever the company. Just make one up. It could be Joe the Box's, whatever, warehouse. We're going to build one next to the federal prison, and these guys are going to work for Joe. He's going to train them. They could be doing film production, whatever it is. Pay them a fair wage so they can be an asset to their family at home. Now they're working with Joe, and because Joe's got warehouses all over the country, when they parole out to go home, now they've got a company. They can add some of this stuff to their resume. They can say, I worked with these people for a year. They can build relationships with HR, and now they have a stable job when they get home, and they're utilizing their time while they're in prison. And we can give I think we should give those companies tax breaks, tax write-offs for working with the prison system. I just think it behooves everybody to do.
Well, also the men, it's mainly men that are in prison, feel like they're a burden to their family, because it is very expensive to have a loved one that is incarcerated. I mean, you're paying for every visitation out of pocket, so flights, lodging, car rental, food, getting your kids, taking time off of work, and then commissary is very expensive. Every phone call you have to pay for. It's very expensive. But not only that, there's still bills that go on. Child support still has to be paid. So at least if they had those programs, they could give you whatever it is, whether you have $300 a month on commissary, and then anything after that goes to the bills. I mean, they do it in the working society where they what do they call it when they take the stuff out of your wages when you work. There is a
garnish.
Yeah. I mean, there is a way to make it happen, but it's really like America doesn't care about their inmates.
Well, I had fines I owed, about $6,000 in fines for damage to the Capitol, and when people would send me money in, the federal government automatically skims some of that money off the top to pay those fines off. They just strong-arm me for it, basically tax me out of it, and I still need to recover that money.
Well, hopefully that'll happen in a lawsuit. Yeah, lawsuits are filed, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so January 6th, there will be accountability when it comes to January 6th. I think it's just going to be a longer term. So when we come back, we will talk about beyond the bars and what it looks like for life after incarceration.
Corrupt judges, broken families, families torn apart. This isn't justice. If you've been wronged by the system, join us. Don't stand alone. Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs, president of Americans for Legal Reform. We're the oldest legal reform group in the United States. The justice system in the United States should be transparent, fair, and open to everybody and accessible. Unfortunately, many times that's not the case. At Americans for Legal Reform, we are here to help. Join the movement. Visit AmericansForLegalReform.com and help reform the system before it fails you.
The America First Ultra MAGA Store for all your MAGA needs. We sell t-shirts, tumblers, flags, hats, sneakers, bumper stickers, and a whole lot more. The most patriotic America First retail store. The America First Ultra MAGA Store.
Welcome everybody to the not-so-newlywed show, where 3 couples are going to compete for really great prizes. Okay, Donna, we asked Mike, who complained first on your honeymoon, you or him?
What do I think?
Yeah, what do you think?
I think he said...
Lisa, this ain't the SATs. Just tell us what... Donna, who complained first on the honeymoon?
I'm sure it was me, but I have no idea.
Jordan is right.
No, it's always me.
What celebrity would you pick for a one-day pass?
For me?
Yeah, for you, not for him.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon! Wow! Who do you hate the most on her side? That rotten no...
There are so many choices.
Thank you all, and thank you for coming out.
name is Elena Ruseva, aka Megalangela. Please check my art at www.megalangela.vip.
America First Warehouse was really the most patriotic venue that you can ever imagine. We wanted to build something for people to be able to come to and feel so comfortable and so relaxed, because there is nothing out there like it. We give an opportunity for people to really feel good about themselves and about this great country.
Welcome back live from Long Island. This is Liberty's Cage, a Justice Reform podcast.
Isn't this a beautiful place right here?
Oh, this is amazing. This is like, I equate this to like Trump Nation, like Disneyland or something.
If you're listening out there and you haven't been up here to see Joe and the crew, you guys got to come out and see this. It's a beautiful thing.
And they have so many fun events going on.
I know. We got to see Times Square today.
Yeah.
We got to go to a rally with our brother back there. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
DVS
amazing.
7.0 right there.
Yes,
Shout out to that man
thank
back there.
you.
Yeah.
There's some wonderful patriots in New York.
Yeah,
I think the reason it's blue is because a bunch of illegals.
Yeah, I think it's probably so.
so.
There was a lot of support. We were riding around in the America First Warehouse van, and we were playing the Patriot music and all that. And some people were giving us the business, but a lot of other people were like, "Yeah." We're celebrating Proud Month today, not Pride Month. So.
I think in the wee hours of November 6th of this year, it was like joy came back for people. They weren't afraid anymore, honestly. It's like, we would wear our MAGA hats out or our Trump gear or whatever. And, I travel a lot for work, so I'd be walking down the aisle in the airplane, and someone would be like whispering, "Oh, I love your stuff." Or like I was coming back from Mar-a-Lago one time, and the steward pulled me to the side, and he was like, "I love your stuff, and I am just so hopeful that President Trump wins." And I was like, "Oh, he's absolutely going to. It's going to be we the people." But, now it's like you see it everywhere.
Yeah. They actually let me in the cockpit on an airplane since I've been home.
After you stormed the Capitol?
Yeah, I stormed the cockpit
Jeez.
after I stormed the Capitol, so yeah.
Okay, back to normal business. Beyond the bars, one thing we want to really talk about is once you're out, what life is like. And one thing you have said openly and been transparent about is that this time has been much harder for you. And I'm very thankful that these January 6 defendants, they have each other. Because as much as we, the general public, want to understand what you all went through on the inside, we can't. Because even though we walked similar paths, we didn't walk in the same shoes. So can you talk a little bit about that, what life has been like from January 20th to now?
Yeah, man, to go back just a bit, you mentioned November 6th. I'll never forget watching, I had a cell door, and it had like a 4-window pane thing, and it had expanded metal in 3 of them, but I could see out of a little bitty hole, and their TV was right there, and we were watching the election. And when they called the election at 2:30 a.m., I was standing there, and I just had tears running down my face, and I was doing my happy Trump dance, and I'll never forget that. And I was just like, everybody's like, "You're going home," and I was like, "I know it," but it was just such a beautiful thing.
Quickly talk about the inauguration day and when they came in to get you.
Yeah, so I told y'all I heard him say there's going to be some happy J6ers later. And about 6:30 that night, I guess that was like noon when he did the inauguration speech, and then 6:30 this guard comes to my door and he's like, "Jenkins, where were you at on January the 6th? And I said, "Man, you know where I was at. Everybody knows I'm a January 6th. Like, I was at the Capitol, you know that." And he's like, "Well," he goes, "get your stuff. You're getting out of here." And I was like, "Please don't play with me like that." I was like, "Don't play with me like that." And he was like, "Jenkins, I'm serious. Get whatever stuff you're taking with you and get over here and put these handcuffs on and get out of here." And I was like, my cellmate, because we have a cellmate in there, and he jumped down off, he's like, "Man, get out of here before they change their mind." And so I got my stuff and I got over there as fast as possible. I was like, "Man, you can have everything else, whatever. I don't care. I'm taking only this stuff." And so they took me out of there. I got out of prison at 1 o'clock in the morning, January 21st, in Terre Haute, Indiana. Did you hear my mic? Yeah, in Terre Haute, Indiana, and it was, what, 3 degrees outside, snow on the ground. It was crazy. They're like, get out of here. Don't film anything in the parking lot. I was like, okay. And then we turned. There's a giant flag. We jumped out of the car, and I was like, promises made, promises kept. I was like, yeah. Thank you, President Trump. If you're seeing this, you don't know how much you impacted me and my family's lives. So thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, almost 1,600 people's lives changed that night. And I believe it was around 211 people were released from prison that night because Donald Trump, I think from the very beginning, he knew what he was going to do for these January 6th defendants. He is the one that called them the political hostages of this nation. And he never forgot about you all. I mean, I know personally from somebody that heard from his mouth that he stayed up at night, that you all kept him up at night because he knew that he summoned you all to Washington, D.C. on January 6th to stand up for the stolen election. And that is the day that the government waged war on the American people. And he knew that he couldn't do anything at that time. For 4 years, he was an average citizen like you and I were. And the day that he had power, he went in and signed it. He didn't care. He gave the biggest middle finger to the media because days before that, J.D. Vance was on Face the Nation with Margaret, and Margaret's running people's names, saying, are you going to pardon this person? They have violent charges, and they never said one way or another. But a big thing in the January 6th community was, are they only going to pardon the nonviolent people? But as we said earlier, there were many people that were charged with violence that weren't violent that day, but it didn't matter in the court's eyes. Going back to that, it was a 99.6 conviction rate for January 6th defendants. So when you walked into that courtroom, you knew you weren't going to win, but you still, like many of the other men, stood up and said, you knew you were going to lose, but you still went in and said, I'm going to do what's right, because now it's case law. Now, even though you all are fully and unconditionally pardoned, it is now case law. So hopefully this will never happen again in American history.
Many of the things we were convicted of were you see that we saw the ICE thing today in L.A., and you've seen the things that have been going on with, I guess, was that in New York where the ICE, they stormed the ICE office, the congressional people and the mayor and all these other people. New Jersey, I guess, is where it was at. But many of the men did less than those people did to those federal agents. And I want to see those people held accountable like I was held accountable. If we're going to be fair, let's be fair across the board.
Well, it's supposed to be equal justice for all, right?
That's right.
It's justice for some.
Well, that's why I tilted these scales the way they're tilted. I don't know if y'all can see those, but they are tilted. They're supposed to be even. Lady Justice is supposed to be wearing a blindfold, but the blindfold was taken off and the scales have been tilted, unfortunately, but thank God for Donald Trump for setting them back right.
Absolutely. So one thing, you listen to podcasts all the time, you watch the news, and as Americans, we feel so helpless. For 4 years, even as an advocate for January 6th defendants, I even felt so helpless, even doing everything that I could within my power. So can you talk about Stand in the Gap, like how it was birthed? Because not only can people still help January 6th defendants as they go beyond the bars, but I think it's important. A lot of people just talk, and we need action.
No, that's right. Well, I feel like God gave me the vision for Stand in the Gap. He birthed that in my heart, and I cast the vision for it, and thank God for you for implementing it on the outside. We started a nonprofit called Stand in the Gap Foundation. You can go to the website. It's standinthegap.foundation. But we are helping January 6 men and women put their lives back on track. We have several things that we're doing. We're working on trying to find somebody who can, if there's somebody out there and you know somebody who does credit repair, we are attempting to find somebody to help the January 6 people repair their credit. Because basically we were kidnapped by the federal government and all of our bills and stuff went south. And so many of us were not able to pay those things. So we need to fix our credit. We also are providing health care because we know that the treatment, dental and medical treatment that the January 6 people receive in federal prison and in the DC jail was completely inadequate. And then we're also doing a thing called Mission Memory Maker, where we are fully funding a 3 to 5 day vacation for the January 6ers and their family, because we know the importance of reestablishing those familial bonds and the relationships with your children and your wife or significant other. And we want them, because the onus really is now on the breadwinner of the family, typically the man on average. I'm not saying women, don't hit me right now. Typically the man is the breadwinner. And so we know there's a lot of pressure on the guys that have been gone for 4 years while Mama Bear is out there taking care of the baby bears. Now Dad's home. He's got to get back to work so he can make up for, what the financial strain that's been on the family. So we want at no expense to them to be able to send them to a resort or whatever. We're going to pay for Uber, airfare, and for the resort and meals and stuff like that. But we want to serve them and help them repair the wounds. And I will say that it has been really, really difficult. Like I said, I've been into prison many different times, and it has never been like this for me. And I have been recently doing a lot better, but I feel like something has been taken from me. I've been seeking this normalcy in my life, and I have said to myself, I don't want to be here if I can't be normal. And I know that sounds really bad, but it has been very difficult, and I get calls from men all the time. I know men about 7 different men are going through divorces right now, as due to the strain that's been placed on their relationships from the events of January the 6th and them being gone, or the way they've been treated, or the way the family's been attacked and canceled and sent hate mail, or the financial strain from lawyers and going to see them and just all these different things. And so, we had men lose. John Mellis's father died while I was in prison. Dan Caldwell's mom died while I was in prison. We had families turn on people. We had family members testify against people at sentencing. It has just been a tragedy what has been done to these people, and we want to walk with our brothers and sisters and make sure and serve them. We want to lay down every penny, every dollar that we have to serve them, just like Christ laid down his life for us. There's no greater love than to lay down your life for your brother and sister, and that may be financially. If you want to offer up time, if you want to donate treasure to help these men and get them back and go repair their lives and get them back on track, then we would love that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it says a lot about you as a person that you were not only fighting the federal government, that you decided to step up and help those around you because what you witnessed in the D.C. jail, and now even what you're witnessing now as a leader in this community. And it's an honor to do this with you. But also, I think it's, it's time now for the American public to stand up. Because for 4 years, nobody wanted to touch us. It was like we had a scarlet letter on us as family members and January 6th defendants that the general public didn't want to touch us. There were people that didn't even want to donate to us because they were afraid that the federal government would backlash to them. And I don't think a lot of people were prepared for what this looked like after January 20th. We are very grateful for President Trump pardoning these individuals. But just because they're pardoned doesn't mean that their life is anywhere even close to what it was when they went in for January 6th. And so I think it's now even more important for the general public to step up and say, we're going to quite literally stand in the gap for you. Because even though you guys didn't go to war, but you guys did time. I mean, you were political prisoners in your own country, fighting the federal government, having the full weight of the federal government against you. I mean, endless money, endless resources, and they were crushing the little man to instill fear into the general public. And in my opinion, they barked up the wrong tree, because for many of the January 6th defendants, they wouldn't take a knee.
Well, yeah, and the mistake that they made is when you take everything from a man, he's got nothing to lose. And so this is my fight now, and I gladly will stand in the middle between anybody and the federal government, and we're going to stand up for those people in prison, and we're going to stand up for our Jan 6 community. And I've met some wonderful patriots here at this warehouse who are also in this fight. And when they cancel you, and we find an alternative. We find, they cancel you on YouTube, we go to Rumble. They cancel you at Bank of America, we go to Old Glory Bank. Like we're gonna work through this. We're gonna navigate this, and we are gonna come out stronger on the other side of it, because they did mess with the wrong people.
Absolutely. You can go to standinthegap.foundation to learn about our past programs and about what we're doing right now. And because we have a live audience, I think we're so inundated with January 6th, we live it every day, that it's so easy to talk about. But how about we answer some questions from the crowd?
I would love that.
If there is anybody here that has a question, please come behind me. You can address Shane or Sarah with them. I know I have a bunch of questions. So I'll start.
All right, let's go.
So you guys are stepping up. You're making a difference in other people's lives. And I know that this whole January 6th day, and they really did mark us, like you said. I do recall President Trump saying, come down to D.C. We were here in New York, and many of us did come down. We decided to keep the warehouse open, Tony and I, to show his protest. The day when it was going down and we heard shots were fired, and my immediate reaction was bullshit. I knew right away something was not right. I knew right away that we are not the terrorists that Seattle, Portland, always saw and watched with their masks on doing it. We're not that way. We are peaceful people. But it really irritated me to see the fake guys in there dressed like us, agitating like us. You were right there in the West Tunnel. That was the breach where everybody came through. There was no videos about that. They destroyed the evidence. Did they destroy the evidence? Is the evidence still there? When will we get retribution?
That's the $1 million question right there. If you're listening, Cash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi, that really question is at you. But we did witness so there's videos that we saw that were unedited, and then there was edited videos. So there's a guy in this video, he's there in this one, but in this one he's gone. So who was that guy? He's probably some kind of federal asset or DOD, DIA, CIA, NSA, Homeland Security, FBI, whatever he was. We know that there was infiltrators there. We know that there were many, many FBI assets, people who were paid to generate federal investigations for the FBI. They were on the ground there. I know a guy, I was in prison with a guy who actually met the people who entrapped him later on after January 6th, but he met those people at January the 6th. And so they deleted the evidence, and there needs to be accountability. That is the most frustrating thing to me. I don't care if it's Republican, I don't care if it's a Democrat. I want to see people hauled off in handcuffs. I want to see people held accountable. I was held accountable. I did my time. They can do their time.
Well, and I think too, if they had nothing to hide, why were the night of the election? Why did they have a shredding truck outside of all of these 3-letter agency buildings in Washington, D.C.? Why didn't they release the 44,000 hours of evidence to the American people and let them form their own opinion?
Well, there's something to hide.
There was at some kind of court, I don't know what it was, what organization, that you could get the video of the police that day, whether it was Capitol Police or Washington, D.C. Police. Because, Shane, you were in the tunnel. You were talking about the woman that was beat with that stick. Victoria White, I believe is her name, is over there. And there is video of that. They can't hide all of it. I've seen it online. I've seen guys dig it up. You talked about one of the patriots that were in jail that had access to some of these videos while he was in jail. I think I might have saw him on Cowboy Logic. So I believe these videos are still available.
Mm-hmm. No, we absolutely, we were given flash drives with our evidence on them. And so we were able to analyze a lot of, but they gave us very, very limited video. And anything that typically would show us in a positive light, like I didn't tell you guys this earlier, but I helped escort an Officer Miller to safety amongst people tried to attack him, and a bunch of us got between him like, no, that's not who we are, we don't do that. And we escorted him to safety. And so they were very selective about what they allowed us to see, and they were very, you couldn't use self-defense at trial. I don't even know if I mentioned that earlier or not. You were not allowed to use a self-defense or defense of others defense at trial. They said you can't use that. So
Just for January 6th defendants in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
So rules for thee and not for me. But I think that what this has done is really expose the corrupt justice system. And now it's up to people like you and I and everybody in this room to hold people accountable.
That's right.
DVS.
Yeah, so I was actually there on January 6th, and I always wondered, I've never saw any video or anyone ever mention the tractors that were directly in front of the steps of the Capitol. There was like 3 or 4 tractors. And I actually remember we were doing a music video there on the lawn. Me, Forgiato Blow, and Nashville OG, and some other artists. And we were filming a music video, and I noticed they had tractors right in the front. And so someone said, oh, those are my tractors. Here, I got the key. You want to do a video on this? And so he started moving around on it. And I was like, okay, he had me up. So it looks cool for the video, fine. But I'm like, okay, you're moving a little too much here, man. Bring me down right now. But I never saw anyone mention those tractors. And for me, when I started to think about it a while after I saw what they were making of that event, that those tractors were there for a reason. And what chances are that some regular Joe Schmo has the keys and wants to ride around in it with millions of people all over the lawn and have it so close to the building. Did you ever hear anything about those tractors?
I hadn't heard anything about that. You say that, and it makes me think about it. And I guess that was on the east side of the Capitol, on the front of the building. But I was on the west side, so I didn't see that. But it's funny that the big giant, those are called embassy doors on the front of the Capitol, and they say that you could hit those things with a tractor trailer, like a semi, and it still would not break those doors down. And I don't know if there's something to that. But what's funny is guys with flag sticks were able to beat those doors open on the front of the Capitol. But yeah, I didn't hear about that though. I would love to. Maybe I could ask some of the J6 people, and we could get back to you on the answer.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
Hi.
Hello.
First, I want to thank you for what you're doing, for standing in the gap. And I think I speak for everybody here and the whole MAGA crowd for our hearts break for what you've been through and what your families have been through. And thank you so much, because you guys have been the sacrificial lambs that ultimately will lead to the salvation of our country. And you've sacrificed so much, and we can't thank you enough for that. My question is there anyone or any team within the Trump organization, within the Trump administration, that's spearheading an effort towards restitution for the J6ers that were incarcerated?
Yeah, I do think so. I do have some connections within the Trump administration, and that's been a question floated around, not only for restitution, but for accountability for these January 6 defendants and their families. And I do believe, even though we don't have a ton of answers, even I don't have a ton of answers, I do believe that it's coming. You have people like Ed Martin and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino in there. Not only them, they have people working underneath them that were specifically hired to investigate January 6th. So my hope is not only that we have restitution for these individuals, but we have true investigations into January 6th, because this can never happen again to American citizens.
And I've hired a law firm to represent me in suing the federal government, and I'm going to go just as hard at them as they came at me. And so let's get it on.
How's it going, Shane?
Good.
That answered part of my question. I was asking about any pending legal battles that are out there from any of the January 6ers. But before I asked the question, I wanted to note that the Epoch Times did a really good documentary on a lot of that footage that was never aired on. I know you mentioned that one video has this and one video has that. They did a whole documentary showing the fake news version and the real version, the original footage. And the fake news would add sound to it and things of that nature. So it's a very good documentary for anyone who hasn't seen it already on the Epoch Times. But I know that there were some January 6ers, the statute of limitations was 2 years. I mean, you were just pardoned now, so it's different for you. But are you aware of any pending civil litigation against the federal government for basically violating the cruel and unusual punishment amendment?
Well, that's what we're going after them for, and ours is going to be a federal tort claim, and it's going to wrap up everything from the treatment by the air marshals to the FBI and Houston SWAT who arrested me. Anybody that played any single role in any of it, the prosecution, whoever, the DOJ, the DC jail, Northern Neck Regional Jail, anybody that played any kind of role in the treatment, the federal prison system, any one of those people are going to be held to account as long as I'm fighting it. And I feel like we have a friendly DOJ, and I feel like we have a friendly administration. I don't think it's a stretch to think that we would file our tort claim and that President Trump would be like, hey, you guys need to take care of this. These guys were, because he will say it over, how those people were treated was horrible, and it was. But I would gladly do it all again for anyone or all of you. Because they really wanted to quench the First Amendment. They wanted to, and we even saw it on the outside while we were in there. They're like, we want to have a celebration of January the 6th and support the men that are in the jail. And we're going to go, y'all come on down to D.C. on January 6th to celebrate the anniversary. And people are like, I'm not doing that, because you see what they're going through. And that's the thing, like, we understand, like, if you want to be a private citizen and you don't want to be in the fight, but if you don't and you have treasure that you want to help, find us. It doesn't have to be our organization. It could be Joe. Find somebody to support in the community. Give them your support fiscally, love, prayer, whatever it is. Support them however you see fit to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it looks like we have one of our own.
There you go.
Uh-oh. A beautiful January 6th defendant.
Oh, it's so good to see you guys up there. It's so good to hear your voices and to know that you're out there speaking for so many. And because we were buried under lies. They keep, comparing it to 9/11. The only thing that we can compare it to is the amount of lies they buried us under. So thank you, because here's where I think a lot of people need you guys. You've got the platform now, we're getting there, and a lot of people having trouble finding work, and because they have that stigmatism on them. So thank you again for what you're doing. It's so needed. And also, there are so many angles that need to come out, right? And when you speak on it, you get overwhelmed even to try to speak on it. So the more that you have these things, the more that people can come and speak and get the truth out there of what happened that day. We all went there for our own purpose, but we were all treated the same by the DOJ. Whether you walked into the building, whether you were on the grounds, or whether somebody was intentionally there to cause harm. But that's why we need to get more an understanding, because we do want to support one another, but we do need to hold accountable. Whether the police there, I think we ought to have a lot more knowledge as to what went on there as well. There's just so many angles, you guys, that you're covering. God bless you both. You're doing great. Thank you very much for being the voice out there for January 6ers. Appreciate that. Sorry, I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
Well, you, my friend, are a hero.
You guys,
American hero.
We love you.
And to what she's saying is people have to realize that this is like an onion unfolding, not only January 6th and everything that went on with that, but it is all connected. COVID, the rigged election of 2020, January 6th, everything, the political persecution of not only January 6th defendants, but Americans as a whole, it is all connected.
No, absolutely. And, the sad thing is the left doesn't care what happens to the right. But I will protest if there's people being mistreated on the left. When I stand up for American rights, I'm even standing up for the people that I can't stand. That means you purple-haired, green-haired, trans lives matter sticker driving car lady we passed on the highway today. And I will do that. It's the right thing to do. My morality is not selective based upon political party. It's based upon, and I don't see race, I see the human race. And so everybody across the board for me deserves their constitutional rights, deserves due process, and that's just going to be it for me.
Absolutely.
What an incredible show. I want to thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for coming. DJ Luke the Nuke is going to start it up with some song and some music for everybody. Don't feel you have to run out.
Hey,
You
Joe.
can ask- Yes, sir.
If you can, let everybody know Wednesday, tune in, 4 p.m. Weekly now we're going to be doing this show regularly, so we would love to have y'all join us and support us.
Yeah,
Why
absolutely.
don't you tell them?
Yeah. Well, okay.
You did a good job.
Tune in Wednesday at 4 p.m. We'll be back with our second episode of Liberty's Cage.
We are blessed beyond belief. God is in this house. He's here all the time. We follow him. We love him. We appreciate him. We know that the nation is coming back with the guidance of God. So he brought this together. Every Wednesday you'll be able to see Sarah and Shane in here talking about the cage, talking about breaking it out. Sean DVS, I give you a lot of credit for coming in from the city. Thank you very much. You and your team and the Patriots, Mark, all the Patriots that are out there loving the country the way they do. I was told that New York City is never going to go our way. I don't know if it's possible with you guys working hard like you did. Maybe it is possible. Thank you very much for coming. Wonderful night. Oh, yeah, one other thing I forgot to mention. The longest I ever went with a girl. Tony and I, 39 years today.
Woo!
Happy anniversary.
She let me go out today. She let me go out tomorrow. She's the best. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. God bless.
What an honor it has been to participate in this experience. Thank you so much, Joe, for opening up your warehouse for us. And what a beautiful establishment we have. Again, America, if you haven't been here, you got to come check it out. And I can't wait to do this next week.
Yeah,
Teresa's not here. She wanted to tell you a couple things. You guys are going to be around with us at the Belmore Patriots rally tomorrow. I don't know exactly where it's going to be started, but we're going to be waving our flags again, looking for that one lady with the bumper sticker.
We're coming for you.
She had to drive next to us. We opened up the door. Justice opened up and said, "How you doing?"
I could see the smoke coming out of her ears.
We took the van today. You'd love it. We opened up. We wanted to meet DVS and the Patriots in front of City Hall. So GPS had us going all kinds of directions, but we said we're going to go down Midtown. So we went down Midtown playing all of our greatest hits, you know, Faraggiato Blow and, you know, Keep Your Red Hat On and the other guy, Rock, the Kid Rock and this, you know, his good one.
Tom McDonald. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Well, anyway, it was Sarah's playlist, which I'm stealing now because it really had every great song there was. And it was bouncing off of the buildings. It was playing so loud. We had the doors open, and we had so much fun. Right, Margie? Yes. Now, there's a lot of them crazy people in New York City. There really is, you know, that have TDS to the most incredible levels that you wouldn't believe. You know, I was afraid to look at anybody. And I just was driving. I'm not going to bother anybody except this one guy who was just driving next to me. And finally, I say, I'm going to look at this. I look. And I go, Shane, you're not going to believe this guy. He's got his finger on me. He's giving us the finger. And this guy's hanging over the finger. And I go, what else does a professional driver like myself do? I dusted him. I moved him over to the next lane. He was lucky the HOV was there, right?
That's right.
He was. I'm sure he's going to be remembering this place. Maybe he'll recognize the house, the number on the side of the van. He'll come and see us.
Absolutely. Well, we just want to thank Joe, Teresa, Tony, John the Blanket, all of you all that are here, Martin backstage that you guys won't even see, for all of your work, for helping us pull this together. Because I agree with you, Joe. I think the Lord has his hand on this, that we can stand up and stand in the gap for American citizens and their constitutional rights. So thank you, Long Island, for joining us tonight. I do want to honor 4 people, and that's Ashley Babbitt, Roseanne Boylan, Kevin Greason, and Benjamin Phillips, because we're fighting for rights to restore for these 1,600 January 6 defendants, but there's 4 families that will never be made whole again. But we will make sure that those names, as long as there are breath in our lungs, that we will be speaking them, because they are real American heroes. So thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Good night, and God bless.
Yeah, help us break liberty's cage, America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.